Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Forest Harvest Operations Site Review Program through the Maryland-Delaware Master Logger Program and the Maryland Forest Service. My name is Agnes Kedmanitz. I coordinate the Maryland-Delaware Master Logger Program. Hi and welcome. We're excited to have y'all here. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the program. So effective October 1st, 2020, the Maryland Forest Service staff will be conducting on-site logging inspections instead of MDE, Maryland Department of Environment. Counties with delegated enforcement authorities from MDE will still retain the right to inspect logging operations in cooperation with the Forest Service. The goal of this program is to reduce the need for enforcement with expanded on-site compliance assistance. So I'm going to try and change my, there we go. So before we get into it, I wanted to give you guys some housekeeping. Thank you for registering. We appreciate you being here. As you may notice, you're being muted and your video is off. This works really well to maintain good bandwidth so that you're able to hear everything clearly and see everything clearly. Also wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. So that means people that have missed out on today, they can watch it later and they can also get credits on there. Hopefully everybody is muted. So I mentioned credits. So at the end of this session, near the end of this session, we're going to be adding a link to in the chat box. I explained what the chat box is. Is there somebody moving around out there?
I touched my mic, sorry.
Oh my God. So to get the continuing education credits, I pointed out that chat box. That you got to get familiar with that chat box because at the end of this session, Taylor, hey, I didn't mention Taylor. She's on the forestry team. She is going to be putting a link in that chat box that you're going to have to click on and fill out that survey. Okay. So when that link comes up, click it and fill out that brief survey just so we can make sure we're giving you the credits that you deserve for being here today. Also in that chat box, as you can see, there's already a small conversation starting about the rain in the chat box. So any questions or comments, please use the chat box. It should be, you click on the chat, it should be on the right-hand side of your screen. If not, it's it's either at the bottom and you click more options, you'll find it. Just play around with it. Then you type your question in and then you press enter on your keyboard and you should be able to ask your questions. We will not be taking verbal questions. We'll be taking the questions in the chat box and I'll ask them verbally of Dave Gailey, who is our guest speaker. So Dave Gailey, he's a regional forester for the Southern region for the Maryland Forest Service. He's employed by the Maryland Forest Service for 34 years, graduated from West Virginia University, and he's the Maryland Forest Service representative for the Maryland Delaware Master Logger Steering Committee. So with that, Dave, I'm going to figure out how I can pass you the ball, unless Taylor can figure out how to do that, because my view is just a bit different than it was before.
I moved it.
Excellent, and Dave's going to share his screen. So we'll see you in after his presentation, then we'll ask the questions, and then I'll send that link so you can click on that to get
Okay, do you see it, Agnes?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's okay. coming up.
Is it coming?
It's coming.
How do you see that?
How do I see that? I see that it's that funky screen that we had before with the multiple screens on it. So it's not your screen yet. It's not the PowerPoint yet.
Okay.
It looks like it's slowly coming up. We appreciate your patience, you guys. And then you just got to put it on the slideshow view and then we're good.
You see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. Thanks Agnes and Taylor for putting this together. As Agnes said, I am the Forest Service rep on the Maryland Master Logger program, and we decided it might be a good presentation to get the forest community and loggers, sawmills, more notification of what's happening. I know Dan Ryder and his group are sending a letter out to all forest product operators and master loggers to give them an announcement of what's happening. And I've been involved with getting the field portion of this set up, the inspection forms, training, the whole process with that for about the past year. Ann Harrison Strang and Dan Ryder were very involved with working with MDE, Maryland Department of Environment, with implementing this MOU to get the Forest Service involved with doing logging inspections. So we have a program that I will run through, hits the highlights of it, what we're looking to accomplish, and we understand there's going to be a learning curve for us. So we're very open to any comments or suggestions. The MOU was signed in 2018 that we would be effective October 1. The original implementation was July 1, but with COVID, we could not get our staff up to speed with training and inspections and that, so we delayed it. And the goal is just to increase presence in compliance with the approved sediment control plan. We're not looking to be cops out there. We want to provide technical assistance. We just want to be a body, if there are problems, more preventive. As I said, the MOU was signed in July of 2018, and there was a group put together with Soil Conservation District, Forest Service, MDE, MDA, all those groups, to get the whole program rolling, what we wanted to accomplish. And the purpose is to ensure continued protection of our natural resources, forestry, water, streams, everything. Maximize efficiency in review and permitting of forest harvest operations. I knew there was a lot of variety in getting permits across the state. And once I started going around the state working with people and trainings, it was amazed to actually see the difference. Even regionally, it's different. And I'm sure you all experienced that. County to county, it's different how to file a permit and get a permit. We are not involved with the permit process, so we're hoping that our presence can maybe ease some of that eventually. And we want to enhance on-site technical assistance. We don't want loggers to be always getting hounded when they get a complaint or whatnot. We get complaints all the time about logging operations, and 75% of it don't understand forestry and logging and the benefits of it. And some of the outcomes, we're looking for the Forest Service that will conduct logging operations starting October 1. So far to date, we've had 5 sites visited, 1 on the shore, 1 in southern Maryland, and 3 in western Maryland. And they've all gone very smoothly, so that's a good start. We want to do possibly 3 inspections on a site, when they start the site, 1 in the middle, 1 at the end. If it's a large job or it's going to be going on for a long time, obviously we might stop in more. And we want to focus more on prevention, education, not just complaint based. We want our foresters to understand the logging business better, what needs to be done to prevent erosion sedimentation through BMP implementations. And we've done a lot of training to be ready for that. And MDE was a big partner in this. They are still the enforcement. We'll get into that and we develop protocols for Forest Service staff to use on site reviews, what to look for and how to handle situations. And so far, what we've done, we've developed a forest harvest operations site review that our staff will use. And as they do site visits or at the end, they can enter this data in a database we're going to have, which will be very useful to have a good log of how many acres are being cut, thinned, clear cut, etc. I think Dan Ryder is real excited to have that type of data available. And it'll be also shared with MDE while they're not doing the inspections or logging visits. They'll still have a hand on what's going on out there. And we developed protocols to ensure BMPs are being implemented with MDE. And we understand it's time sensitive. All this rain, you could be on a site one day and the next day after a heavy rain, everything's blown out. I understand that. We want to train our folks to understand that and work with loggers that things get difficult. We want to ensure timber harvests are conducted in compliance with the approved plan, and we want to work to make sure we can help get that. All our foresters took the same green card training that loggers have to take and master loggers to be certified. We held 7 statewide field training sessions. Dan Ryder, Ann Harrison Strang, and I did that across the state. They were very beneficial. Get an idea of what's out there for those that may not be familiar with the logging inspection process. And we worked with the soil conservation districts to modify the approved county permit. That's how the Forest Service has access to property. On the logging, on the standard plan permit, it'll say contact Mark Muir, St. Mary's County Forester. It has his phone number 3 days prior. So that's how we have access. Otherwise, we can't access land. And currently, we have 21 out of 23 counties on board involved with the program. There's 2 left that the Forest Service is in communication with, and we expect them to be online and participate as well. And then before implementation, we held a virtual meeting with the delegated counties to review this new process. And I'll show a list of delegated counties later. The delegated counties still do have the enforcement authorities. And the site review form, it is made right out of the manual. We have some counties like Prince George's where we do the logging inspections. That served as a good starting point. This form will document conditions at the time of the visit. As I mentioned, it'll be entered in our database to have across the state. And it can be used as an official inspection. Say if a neighbor is complaining or something, we can have this document that shows, look, everything's in compliance. And we could make that available to folks if they want that. I think it's been shared in some regions already. So, and it's right out of the manual, 10% and greater seed and back drag, all that. There's nothing new in there. So the site review process, once the Forest Service receives approved plan from the Soil Conservation District, then the next step would be when the logger's ready to move in, they contact us. If it's a delegated county where they have authority, the foresters and the delegated county inspectors have been in communication that they could both go together or one would go. We do not want to delay someone if they want to move to a site and they call us and we can't meet them. We're not going to hold a logger up from moving in. As the site inspections get active, the harvest is completed, we'll take notes, enter it into our database, and then we'll do a final visit when it's completed. We've had a couple already completed, and then that it's closed out and no one can change it or tamper with it, but it'll be maintained. And once it'll be accessible to MDE as well, as I mentioned earlier, and the regional foresters, so they can monitor what's going on in their area. And then periodically, the database administrator will save the data and put it into a permanent file to save it, so that if anything's needed down the road, it'll be available. So this is a flow chart that basically shows it. The forest harvest applications made to SCD. They send the approved plan to the Forest Service or the county. County does their normal review. Logger notifies the forester and the delegated county, if it's delegated county, 3 days prior to wanting to move in. We have priority sites we want to visit, stream crossings, steep slopes, things like that, which I'll have details on later. And then we start to enter our data. We make a site visit, look at the landing, look at access, simple things like that, that everybody's on the same page, all works good. If something needs changed, um, if the landing location isn't going to work, the logger's going to know right away. If it happens to be in the lowest spot of the property and water's going to collect, we definitely want that moved. The logger would want it moved. So then we update the database and people have access to it. So the notification protocols, this is kind of when we get out there. And I'll read it to everybody. If a DNR forester becomes aware of any of the items listed below, they shall notify, talk to the FPO, and address the areas of concern in order to comply with the approved plan. The goal is to eliminate the need for enforcement by providing technical assistance to implement BMPs. Any enforcement issues must be approved through the regional forester to rectify the situation. And we want to do this. We may have new foresters coming in or foresters not as familiar with logging operations. So they will have to go through the regional forester if any enforcement action is going to be taken. And MDE and the delegated counties will still maintain the enforcement authority. And then they trust us to rectify that situation. And these are some of the main things we'll look at. If we go out and there's a harvest going on without an approved plan, that's going to be a red flag that we will want to work with this site, this operator, to get a plan involved and get things in order. Or if we go out and visit a site, see significant erosion or accumulated sediment deposit in the waters of the state, blue line streams, anything. For instance, if water's running down the slope and creating deep ruts and a lot of sedimentation, that's going to be something we want to correct pretty quick. Forest harvests that fail to implement BMPs impacting the intent of the sediment control plan to abate water pollution. If we go out and a site is running down 35% slopes or skidding through wetlands in a wet part of the year, compacting and rutting, those are the things we want to address. Forests that don't have authorized stream crossing. If you're crossing a blue line, intermittent or perennial stream without an approved plan, that's kind of difficult. So we want to get that corrected. Or similarly, if you're cutting along a blue line stream without a streamside management zone, a buffer management zone, I think everybody's pretty familiar with that. You have to leave 60 square feet, flag the buffer, try to back in to get the trees out, don't make skid trails. Or harvesting non-tidal wetlands that haven't been delineated or authorized in the plan. If you harvest in a wetland, you just need to have a soil map or the non-tidal wetland BMP attachment to the sediment control plan. I'm sure people have seen that, in order to minimize, rutting, grading, filling, things like that. And then the last one, forced harvests that fail to correct minor violations after being advised after a second time. If we come out to a job and say the landing or something is just tracking mud on the road all the time, and we're getting a lot of complaints about that, or if there's a steep slope and sedimentation's running, I know it's tough to put a water bar in while you're logging, but if somehow we can divert the water into the wood, into the forest floor, if we get stubborn, or we get a couple notices and there's no cooperation, that'll send off a flag to maybe bump it up to the regional forester. And even beyond the sediment erosion control plan, some counties have permits they want added to it. I know in Charles County in southern Maryland, the county collects $192 for an inspection fee. Planning and zoning, they have requirements in some counties. And we all know if you're cutting in a critical area on the shore, southern Maryland, you have to have a plan approved by the Forestry Board. That's another step in the whole process, even before you file the plan. And similarly, Forest Conservation Act, if you're cutting an easement of a development or a property that's been subdivided, it's a similar plan as a critical area timber harvest plan has to be approved by the county forestry board before logging can start. So there's a lot of homework for a logger or a sawmill. I mean, I definitely understand that. On a statewide basis, there's 350 to 375 permits a year. The greatest percent naturally is in western and on the lower eastern shore. And we have set the Forest Service the target to try to visit 50% of them on the shore in western Maryland. I think the regions want to try to hit more than that actually with the program starting. And in southern and central, we want to hit 75% of the sites. In priority sites, if there's a stream crossing on it, we definitely want to visit it. If there's a buffer zone with cutting, we want to visit it. In Western Maryland, if you're cutting on steep slopes or building trails on 20, 25, 30% slopes, we want to visit that. Neighbor proximity. I hope this is only in southern and central Maryland, but sometimes you move into a job and landowners next door just wear you out. We definitely want to be involved there to try to help educate people and let them know that things are being done properly. The roles, the MDE and delegated counties will still be the enforcement authority upon our contact with them. If a permit needs filed, if you're going to disturb 5,000 square feet or more, forest harvest, there's just one type of plan that MDE approves and SCD reviews. And the sole conservation districts review all the permits and delegated authority to some counties, which are 10 of them. And the DNR will be doing the inspections, do the site review process based on some counties that we already have been doing it with. That's what the MOU based on existing models. We want prevention, predictable, reasonable regulation using forestry standards. We want the loggers and sawmills to continue to buy and cut timber and manage land without fear of unknown regulations or anything like that. These are the delegated counties. Southern Maryland, it's all but St. Mary's County. And St. Mary's County is probably the easiest county in the state to get a permit from. Central region, Baltimore, Hartford, Carroll, and Montgomery, those are all delegated. Western is Frederick, and east is Kent and Worcester County. And in these counties, when you get your logging permit, it'll say contact the county forester plus the inspection officer. And if you just get one of them, it'll be up to those two hopefully to coordinate, but we request that you call both of them if you're logging in a delegated county. If you're cutting in Charles County, you would call the Charles County inspector and then call the Charles County forester. And then they would either do a joint visit or one would meet you and then they would just move on with it. So Forestry BMPs, it's all about planning and timing. With all this rain, that's truly an aggravation. Minimize grading to get access to sites is a big thing. They emphasize native materials on stabilization, seed source. Avoid stream crossings if you can. I think everybody would do that if they could. Buffer zones, they need to maintain the 60 square feet of basal area. That requires, the forester to do the plan. Steep slopes, restriction for slopes, wetland stabilizations. The skids, trails, haul roads, landings, those are the high profile areas. The steep slopes on skid trails, the landings, if it's running off a landing, trash, oil, things like that, it gets to be a complicated area to stabilize sometimes. These are just some pictures of some logging mats. I don't know where this was from, but this is excellent. That's a lot of mats. I know those are expensive and they wear out. A lot of loggers use them. I see it on the shore and in southern Maryland a lot. They do a great job. I'm sure this time of year with all this rain, there's a lot more of them going out there. Water bars, this is an interesting picture. The bottom line is, tie it into one side, like the left side of this picture, and let it bleed off into the forest floor. This is about the most immaculate water bar I think I've ever seen made. I don't know. This is from Virginia. So the focus of this photo is, tying it in on one side and letting it bleed into the forest litter. This is a real live water bar on a job in Southern Maryland. It's that hump right at the top. Um, Skidders aren't bulldozers, but to push it up, angle it, anchored in one side, stabilize it. You can see the stream down at the bottom. That's what we're looking for, and you guys have seen that and done this. Bridges, temporary bridges are the preferred method to cross a stream. This is in the manual. It's covered. Spanning bank to bank, minimizing stream disturbance, putting bumper logs on the side to keep stuff from going into the creek. These straw bales, I personally put those straw bales in there. We had an inspection on a tree farm audit, and they felt that sediment was going in there, so I put those up. This is a real live bridge and a job in Southern Maryland. You can see they have the mats in the middle. It goes bank to bank. They have their bumper logs on the side. The stream looks pretty well protected. That's what we're looking for to span that whole creek like that. And this is the same crossing after they're done. They pulled the mats out. The left side of the stream had quite a steep embankment there in the beginning to get on it. So I felt this looked pretty good, stabilized, and the water looks pretty clean. Bridge approachment stabilization. This is fancy with some 2-inch stone there. If you get into a site in Southern Maryland, we use a lot of recycled concrete. Bank run gravel just really doesn't work, or the mats as we discussed earlier. So there's different methods. Corduroy, logging, things like that can help a lot with stabilizing. The landing or the deck, this usually gets most of the attention because it's closer to the road and people think Walmart's coming or whatever's going to happen. And the trucking in and off of the highway is tough all the time, especially this time of year. So the landing draws attention. Try to make them under 10% slope, keep everything on site, keep your oil spills to a minimum, clean up if possible. Landing entrance, this is a good one. They're using the mats where they're loading. They have the gravel that actually touches right up on the road, so the trucks coming off the mats onto the gravel and then out on the road to hopefully minimize any disturbance. Forestry goals for the site review program. We want to improve the use of harvest BMPs. Ann Harrison Strang does a lot of monitoring of this, and we already are 88% compliance. Loggers are doing a great job keeping sediment out of the streams and implementing BMPs. We want to forest health and diversity. We want to promote logging, address our aging trees, slower growth, great mortality. We need to thin trees, manage trees. The social economic benefits, we want to maintain social economy in rural areas of the state where logging is prevalent. We want to promote equitable access to forest harvesting through forest product markets. There's a big study going on now. Most of you probably heard Dan Ryder's leading and working with environmental strategies to try to help improve some of our market situations to hopefully avoid further loss of markets and capacity for management. Some of the outcomes from this program, the Chesapeake Bay model uses harvest BMP implementation rates as a credit for total daily maximum load of sedimentation. And this is reported from the Forest Service to the Maryland Department of Environment, and they get credits. And there's programs in the Bay set by the governor and groups that we need to get so many credits. So this program is going to help with monitoring that and tallying some credits. We want to provide industry the confidence in their capacity to comply with regulations, resulting in positive impacts to the environment and economy. I think everybody's aware of the regulations to work in Maryland with logging. We want to be assistance with that if there are problems or issues. We want to reduce the need for enforcement with expanded on-site compliance and assistance. I rarely hear of enforcement issues in Southern Maryland. There have been some over my 30 years down here, but it is rare. We want to improve communications with local county governments on forest harvest operation permit process and compliance site visits to foster a better understanding of the benefits from forest management. This is a goal that I would like. I've worked with counties and SED offices in Southern Maryland to try to make the permit process less cumbersome, less expensive. So hopefully with our involvement in the field and working with some of these counties, that might be an opportunity for us to get a foot in the door and maybe improve some of these processes. The next step, we're communicating with DNR County Forest Service to confirm county-specific process is working. A lot of our foresters have already been in contact with the counties that were doing these inspections, coordinating with the delegated counties to make sure they're on board with what's happening. We want to provide training as needed for FPOs and Forest Service staff. I think we still could use a lot more training in the field um, just to keep us up to speed. We want to coordinate site visits with Forest Service and delegated counties so that everybody's on the same page with what we're seeing out there. And we want to provide updates if inspection staff changes. If we have a turnover of a forest or two in a county that you've been used to working for 20 years, we want to make sure that you can get in contact with the new staff for logging inspections or anything you may need. So the key is, and this even took a little bit, that we get all harvest permits, the approved plans from Soil Conservation District in a timely manner. Loggers need to call before they cut, give us 3 days, use preventative BMPs, and we're going to try to inspect the priority sites. I went over the stream crossing, steep slopes 3 times. We'll follow our protocols for enforcement as needed. It has to go through the regional forester, and I'm sure if it gets to the regional forester level, it'll even go higher than that with discussions. But I don't see that as being an issue. And we want to continue to provide technical assistance on BMP issues. And I'm sure a lot of foresters can learn a lot from loggers as well. I know I did early in the career. Loggers don't want to do it the hardest way possible. They want to get in there the easiest way, make the least disturbance, cut the least, push the least. So it's a win-win situation that way. I think everybody wants to do the best job with the least disturbance. So that's the end of the slides, the PowerPoint. I wish we could be in the woods somewhere going over this stuff, but that's not going to work right now. So I will end this, Agnes, and let you do any questions. I hope everybody was hearing me.
Everybody was hearing you, yes.
Okay.
So everybody, if you want to add some questions in that chat box, feel free. It's on the bottom right-hand side. You're going to see maybe a sign that says participants and something that says chat. So you can click on that chat button and then type in your questions there. So Dave,
Yes,
we got a nice job, Dave, on there. Compliments are coming in already. Nice to see people.
You.
Nice to see people using the chat box. So you mentioned at the top of this presentation that that document, the forest site review document, is in a manual. Is that the sediment and erosion control manual?
No, the forest harvest operations site review form is what we developed internally across the state. Ann and Dan and I finalized it. I developed it from other forms and from using what's required in the manual. And it goes over everything that's pretty much covered in the manual. It's broken down: entrance and haul roads, landings, skid trails, streamside management zone, stream crossing, and stabilization. It's not in the 2015 manual because we developed it.
Okay.
It's what we use when we do our site inspections.
So is that something that somebody would be able to get their hands on beforehand, or is that
Yeah, I think we've already talked with that. Dan Ryder, you can chime in. I think that's something we can distribute and hand out, isn't it? Dan's muted. Can you unmute him?
Yeah, he's able to unmute.
Yeah, no, that's Dave. That would be great. That'd be a
Yeah.
great thing to. We would encourage the distribution of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's already been asked, I think, in Central Region. So we can make that available somehow. Maybe through Agnes could post it on the Maryland Master Logger site. I'll work with Ann and Dan on that, but we can make that available to loggers and sawmill companies.
Great, great. So another question, how did this all come about? Like we have 88% compliance already. So that's good. Our loggers are great. So did Forest Service, did the MDE, like how did this memorandum of understanding come about?
I would defer that to Dan since he's free to speak. Dan will probably give a better background on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's kind of like, why are you fixing something that's not broke? And the answer to that is we felt that it was broke. And what I mean is, gosh, for my whole career, while I've heard complaints all along, and I've witnessed it firsthand personally when I was actively buying timber myself. Too many times we'll get a complaint from a concerned citizen, and MDE or the delegated county is required by law to respond to that complaint. Then oftentimes what would happen is, you know, the inspector would come out that's very well versed in urban development type sediment erosion control and not very well versed in the differences, you know, to expect on a logging job. And it would be a lot of confusion, a lot of unnecessary discussion ensue. Sometimes it would even lead to, you know, to a fine or some kind of enforcement action. It rarely happened, to be honest, but it happened enough. Then the other thing that we found is universally what we found is loggers want to do a good job, but they don't know what they don't know, and we found that, you know, the loggers that work more frequently with foresters tend to have even higher compliance rates. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to actually provide a service to the logger to prevent any kind of unnecessary any kind of unnecessary intervention from, you know, from inspections and complaints that aren't warranted. Just trying to keep problems from becoming a problem to begin with, and to be there to answer questions. Hey, maybe you'd have a better idea how to cross that stream than what I had in mind. You know, that kind of thing. Another great service that we're anticipating is we can provide a translation service, if you will. You know, as foresters, we understand logging, and we understand enough about the technical details of sediment and erosion control so that, you know, we can provide that third-party, independent, yet expert voice on this is a good job or this job needs to be improved, and you know, avoid a lot of confusion on the ground with people that aren't necessarily very familiar with logging jobs. In other words, we wanted what we thought was working well and just make it work better. And I also want to take time to point out something else too. What we're proposing here, or what we're now doing, it's not new. First off, all the states around us are already doing it to some extent, but then also a lot of counties in Maryland, we've already been doing this in a lot of counties in Maryland. All we're doing is just taking what we know to work well in a lot of these counties and just expanding it statewide. Bottom line, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, as an extension agent, one of the things I like to talk to landowners about is that relationship between the landowner, forester, and logger. And this is just an example of how the foresters and loggers are working together also. So I really appreciate that point of view of the relationship and like the communication between the professionals. I think that's great. And thinking of that landowner too. So I think that's great. So MFA is willing to help out with sharing any information that y'all want to share. So Maryland Forest Association is willing to help out. Question here, is it necessarily to call ahead for each county of operation? Is it necessary to call ahead for each county of operation?
Yeah, I think what they're meaning is prior to starting the logging job, do they need to call? And yes, that's part of the process. 3 days notice, and that has been in the sediment erosion control plan laws. That's nothing new. Even prior to us taking over the inspections, you're supposed to notify before you're starting MDE. So yeah, call us 3 days or if you can before you start, and then we would meet you on site to get started.
Right. So call the sooner the better, eh? That's probably.
Yes, and like I mentioned earlier, if they call us on a Monday, they want to move in Tuesday or Wednesday, and we can't meet them, we're not going to stop them, but we'll get out there as soon as possible and then assess the site.
Great. Okay, so we got another question here. Will complaints from the public go to DNR Forestry prior to MDE being notified? So does the Forest Service find out about any complaints before the MDE?
Yes, they will call us. In fact, we had a complaint yesterday. MDE contacted Dan, and it was a Calvert job. So they're not involved with it. They're leaving it all in our hands. So when we get complaints, it'll be sent to the Forest Service, and we will make a site visit. But theoretically, if they're logging and they notified us, we'll know about the operation anyway. So hopefully we can eliminate that. But yeah, the complaints will come to forestry. If it's in a delegated county, they could call the county first. So that's a possibility in those 10 counties that were delegated. They could bypass us if they want.
How do you know a county is delegated? How would?
That list I showed, what delegated means is the Maryland Department of Environment gave the inspection and enforcement authority to the county. Like they go out and they would do the inspections, if they issue stop work orders, all that. They don't need to call MDE for enforcement.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like our questions are dwindling here. So if you have any questions in the chat box, please put them in. I'm going to ask Taylor to put in the link for people to click on to get their credits. So if you're not familiar with the chat box, let's hope you find it now, because Taylor's going to be putting in the link to get credit. There you go. There it is. Do you see that there, everybody? So please click on that and fill that in to get credits for today. Does anybody, Dave, Gailey, Dan, Ann, I know you're on the line here, do you have any closing statements or anything that you'd like to reiterate about the program? Again, I think this is a great idea. I love this relationship building idea.
Ann is muted. You'd have to unmute her.
All right, so she will get unmuted shortly. Yes.
I started typing, but it takes a while to type. So thanks for that. I just wanted to say we are genuinely looking for how do we make this process work better. This is, we don't have new staff for this. This is an investment to try and make the permitting process in Maryland work better. And I think it is up to us working together and improving communication with the other, agencies that are doing permitting to make it so. And so this is us trying to step forward and saying, we want to do the best job we can, help people understand that this is these are sustainable operations. And we are, all committed to, keeping sediment out of the stream. We have BMPs to do it.
Great, great, well said. Anybody else have any closing statements? Mine would be, if you haven't clicked on the link yet that's in the chat box and you want continuing education credits, please do so now. And if you're watching this and it's the recording of this, please fill out the quiz and send that into the office, okay? If that's it, Dave Gailey, what a great presentation. Thank you so much for being not only a good mentor, but a great presenter and taking care of the logging community. We really do appreciate that. Dan,
Yeah. I just wanted to say I haven't gotten any responses yet on that Google form, so I'm unable to know who's been on this webinar and when we log off. So if you want your credits, fill out the form, please.
Thank you.
So what they need to do is either click on that link right now,
Yes,
or copy it and paste it into like a new tab on Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or something like that, and then put in their information, and that's how they get their credits, right?
Yep. Great. Good breakdown. Great.
Well, if they have trouble, they can call you, Agnes.
Well,
later.
we will not have a record of who attended. So this is the time to do it. Yes. So copy and paste that link, copy it, put it somewhere. But this is it. So we appreciate it, Dave. I appreciate your time. I'm sure this was helpful to everybody. Dave, Anne, and Dan, we appreciate you being there. And Dave, people can call you if they have any questions, eh?
Sure, yeah, no problem.
And there's your email address, dave.gailey@maryland.gov. So simple. Okay, y'all.
Okay, thank you, Agnes.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. Keep up the good work, everybody.